begin our special Police
Recording
Commission
in
meeting
progress.
on December 15th, 2021, with a topic dealing with juvenile justice reform proposals, with a presentation as far as various aspects on accountability, rehab, and prevention. Before we get into the meeting, I would like to have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome to Watertown. We have people who are from outside of Watertown. We have various members of different places, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. To my left, we have the Chief of Police from Middlebury.
Patrick Daly.
Mark Ramo, Town Manager.
Allison Villanueva, Superintendent of Schools for Watertown.
And to my right,
Joshua Berniger, Police Chief here in Watertown.
Haven't been in these council chambers for a while. Joe Paletta, State Representative for Watertown.
Robert Herm-Zesina, Town Councilman, Liaison to the Police Commission, and a retired member of the Watertown PD.
we also have here other council people tonight. Would you please introduce yourselves over at the other table?
Sure, Robert Vitale. Kennedy Harris.
And in the back, we have another councilman, way in the back, Marianne Rosa. Would you please stand?
Marianne Rosa, Vice Chairman of Council.
Thank you, Marianne.
Rachel Ryan.
Rachel Ryan. Okay, very nice having you here tonight. And Gary Lafferty. Welcome to the commission and also to our meeting tonight. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to get a general sense of what is happening within our community, but also the communities that surround us. We are unfortunate to have a chief of police here tonight because of other commitments from Waterbury. But it is very fortunate to have Chief Dealey with us from Middlebury. And of course, when we talk about problems, it is not just for Watertown. The impact from Waterbury is real to all the communities that surround it. Yes, there may be higher crime numbers in Waterbury, but it does spill over into neighboring towns. So one of the efforts that we are trying to do here today is trying to solve a problem, which of course maybe is not solvable with this meeting tonight, but also maybe stop any future activity within our town, and maybe through technology and other police efforts, we can prevent any kind of tragedies in our towns. So first, I'd like to turn a presentation over to the Chief of Watertown, Josh Berniger. He has a presentation that he would like to give us as a kickoff to this round table. Chief?
Terrific. Mike, can you cue up the PowerPoint presentation, please? Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to relocate to the center table just so I can see the screen better.
Good.
Good evening, fellow panelists, esteemed members of the audience, community members, and fellow staff members of the Watertown Police Department. Thank you for all coming out tonight for this very important discussion. The point of the presentation I'm about to give you is simply to give an overview of crime trends in the town of Watertown over the past 2 years. That's 2020 and 2021, up through the end of November. So the stats you see here do not include any part of the month we're currently in. Next slide, please, Mike. The data you're going to see in this presentation are going to primarily be compared to data sets of index crimes, which I'll explain what they are in a minute. In addition to the index crimes, we'll also look at drug and narcotic violations, drug overdoses, and breach of peace situations that have occurred here in town. Next slide, please. Index offenses refer to the 8 classes of offenses that we have to report to the Federal Bureau of Investigation by law. And that is murder, robbery, burglary, forcible rape, aggravated assaults, motor vehicle thefts, all other larcenies, and arson. Next slide, please. In 2020, the Watertown Police Department had 0 homicides. We experienced 3 robberies, 14 burglaries, 230 larcenies, 2 aggravated assaults, 38 sex or moral investigations, and 52 motor vehicle thefts. The graph you see to the right of this slide, the red plot is the 2020 plot by month. Overlaid on that is the orange line, which is the 2021 plot. The trend line, or the diagonal line you see there, is showing the increase, the upward trend for 2020. As the year progressed, the index crimes were on an upward swing. Next slide, please. Here the, back one. Here the graph remains the same, except the trend line here is showing the 2021 trend. You can see it's not as steep as the 2020 trend, which means the index crimes have softened up just slightly over the course of 2021. Again, we experienced 0 homicides, 2 robberies, 18 burglaries, 221 larcenies, 3 aggravated assaults, 34 sex or moral investigations, 40 motor vehicle thefts up through the end of November, and 0 arson investigations. And again, this does not include December. Next slide, please. In 2020, we recorded a total of 34 drug and narcotic violations. In 2021, we've only recorded 14. And I find this to be a very interesting slide because it corresponds with a couple significant changes that occurred in the law, as well as COVID in the year 2020. You can see at the start in the graph over there, we started out with 10 violations in the month of January, and then had 8 in February and March together. And then, of course, COVID hit in March of 2020, and the world shut down, and we didn't have any violations at that point for a while. But in July of 2020, marijuana became legalized. Marijuana certainly accounts for a significant number of our past drug violations, but laws also changed in October, where the Police Accountability Bill went into effect, and many drug violations that were recorded by the Watertown Police Department in the past were as a result of motor vehicle stops, where we were able to obtain consent to search the vehicle. And without that consent to search the vehicle, we're no longer finding the volume of drugs that we used to be able to. Next slide, please. Oh, was that 2? Was that 2, Mike, or 1? Okay, great. So, terrific. Drug overdoses. In 2020, we recorded a total of 30 drug overdoses. 2021, up through the end of November, we were at 27. We're probably on target for about 35 by the end of 2021. Unfortunately, our opioid epidemic has not softened up at all. If anything, we're getting more overdoses this year than we did last year, which is an unfortunate reality. Next slide, please. In 2020, as far as burglaries goes, we had 14. 2021, we had 18. Statistically, that's a 29% increase. Burglaries can either be from a building or going through cars. Next slide, please. Robberies, again, statistically insignificant just due to the low volume, but we had 3 in 2020 and 2 in 2021. Next slide, please. In regards to larcenies, a larceny includes the basic categories are shopliftings, theft from a building, theft from a motor vehicle, theft of motor vehicle parts, and then all other. In 2020, we experienced 230 larcenies. In 2021, we recorded 221 larcenies year to date. As you can see depicted on the graph, larcenies are one of those categories of crimes that has been on a steady increase ever since the start of COVID. Next slide, please. To break down larcenies a little bit further, this graph here shows that larcenies from a motor vehicle make up the largest single portion of our larceny category. In 2020, that was 46% of all larcenies were having items stolen from a car. These are your typical situations where people are trolling neighborhoods trying to simply find unlocked cars, open up the car, and steal something that's inside the car. A small little wedge up there in blue was the theft of motor vehicle parts at 4%. This could be tires, rims, catalytic converters, or any other actual part of a car. The other categories, shoplifting only accounted for 16% in 2020. The next slide will show 2021, Mike, if you will. And you can see there's been some changes to what the actual larcenies are in town. The larcenies from a motor vehicle still account for the largest amount, 42%. Motor vehicle parts has increased slightly. We've had a lot of catalytic converter thefts this past year. There's a market for the heavy metals that are found within those that part, and unfortunately are an easy target. Shopliftings have also increased dramatically this year, and some very brazen shoplifting. Some of them you've seen on television, but we've experienced that here in Watertown as well from many of our commercial establishments, that shopliftings are on a steady rise. Next slide, please. And just for comparison, those two same charts are side by side. We'll just pause on this for a minute so you can digest the material. But you can see that 50% of all larcenies in both years all involve a motor vehicle, either the parts of the car or the theft was from a car, and that's remained pretty static. Motor vehicle thefts in 2020, we recorded a total of 52 motor vehicle thefts. That's basically one per week if you averaged it out, although they don't occur so evenly like that. We can go several weeks without a motor vehicle theft, and then in a single day or two, we can account for 2, 3, 4 motor vehicle thefts all in close order. In 2021, we recorded 40 motor vehicle thefts till the end of November, and I'm aware we've already had another 1 or 2, I believe, since the end of November. You can see the trend line on that is certainly on an upward trend. Regarding motor vehicle thefts, from January 2020 through November of 2021, the total amount of vehicles stolen out of the town of Watertown accounts for 92 cars. Of the 92 stolen motor vehicles, we have only been able to clear 5 with an arrest. That's not unusual. The statewide arrest rate for motor vehicle thefts is only in about 5 to 10% of all cases actually get cleared by arrest. Generally, we take DNA swabs of all stolen motor vehicles once they get recovered and try to enter that DNA into a national database. It's called CODIS. That database has the DNA of all adult convicted felons. So if that DNA does match anyone that's in that database, we'll get a hit and can generally do a warrant for the arrest for that person for the theft of that motor vehicle. The reason so many of these crimes aren't solved is our offenders are too young to have their DNA in that database. So even if we're getting good DNA, that DNA will go into the database as an unknown, and we won't get a hit on it until that offender becomes a convicted adult felon sometime later in their life. We currently have 13 pending submissions at the state lab right now for DNA. Next slide, please. Vandalism's been on a sharp increase this past year. In 2020, we recorded 54 incidents of vandalisms. In 2021, we're already up to nearly 80. Next slide, please. These graphs depict the breakout of exactly what was vandalized in town. In 2000 and, I'm sorry, I think this is both years. The graph on the left is the type of property that was vandalized. The largest grouping here was motor vehicles, or motor vehicles themselves were the target of the vandalism. It looks like residences and other town property accounted for the other two largest sections. The vandalism type, the overwhelming amount here is the smashing out of windows. And again, most vandalism cases is a youth crime. It's very rare we get an older element of criminals going out and simply vandalizing property. Next slide, please. Breach of peace incidents. In 2020, we had 164 incidents. In 2021, that decreased to 93. So the incidents of breach of peace themselves, which is basically simply some type of public disturbance, has actually decreased significantly. But what is alarming when we go to the next slide is that the number of assaults has increased dramatically from 2020 to 2021. Now, again, we have to take the COVID, the pandemic, and the lockdown into account here. All of our statistics for 2020, really, when you lay them out over a 10-year period and you see 2020, it's a complete anomaly where all you can say is it was a COVID lockdown year, and none of the stats really align with the year prior or after. But this year, certainly, we have had more of our incidents have resulted in actual physical assaults rather than people simply yelling at each other, or which would be more of a breach of peace situation. Next slide, please. Of all the assaults in 2020, about 71% were simple physical assaults, which really resulted in a minor injury. In red, you'll see about 29% of the overall number were aggravated assaults where the injuries were more serious. In 2021, the aggravated assaults actually decreased, which is a good thing. Next slide, please. In regards to juvenile crime, from 2020, the Watertown Police Department, we issued 18 juvenile referrals. And for those of you unfamiliar with what a juvenile arrest is, we don't arrest a juvenile generally in the same manner that you arrest an adult. A juvenile, anybody under the age of 18, if we find probable cause that they committed a crime and we opt to do an arrest, it's more of a, it's kind of like what you would get as a speeding ticket. It's a piece of paper, it's a summons, that's a promise to appear that the child and their parent signs that they promise to appear in court at a certain day, and they get referred to juvenile court. In 2020, we issued 18, and year to date, we issued 18. Actually, we're up from 18 already this year. I know we've had a few in December already. The juvenile referrals were primarily for the crimes of breach of peace, bringing a weapon onto school grounds, harassment, threatening, and criminal mischief. We do employ a school resource officer at both Watertown High School and at Swift Middle School. Corporal DeCina works at the high school, and Officer Donston primarily works out of Swift. Next slide, please. Although breach of peace have seen a decrease, we did notice that the more serious assaults have more than doubled since 2020. We have seen that 29% increase in burglaries this past year. Larcenies did increase slightly, but the dynamic of larceny has changed dramatically, and that shoplifting and the theft of motor vehicle parts has taken a much bigger part of that pie chart. Motor vehicle thefts have actually decreased just slightly in 2021 from 2020. And we've noticed that that decrease coincides with our participation with the coronavirus relief funds, where we've been putting out extra patrols on an overtime basis directly into hotspots in town where we've had a lot of motor vehicle theft issues, paid for through the coronavirus funds through the federal government. We've also been heavily patrolling the commercial districts where the shopliftings have occurred. So we're hoping that is part of this positive decrease in motor vehicle thefts. We've also been on a robust campaign to educate the public in the importance of locking their car doors, not leaving their vehicles running and accessible, even at gas stations or convenience stores, where it's very easy for a car thief to simply hop in the car and drive away with it. Although we've seen a slight decrease in the number of car thefts, it does not appear to be any decrease in the number of car theft attempts. We've had several incidents where we've had a car theft attempt reported to us, but that number would not be included in an actual theft. Vandalism, again, a significant increase. We talked about the drug and narcotic violations being significantly reduced due to both COVID, the change in the laws regarding marijuana, and another notable thing with the law on drugs as well is when we get a medical call for someone experiencing a medical issue, possibly an overdose, and they would have a narcotic substance on them, oftentimes that person would end up arrested for the possession of that narcotic substance. The laws have changed also now where the police no longer arrest a drug-dependent person seeking medical help for a drug-related problem, even if they have those drugs on them. The drugs will get seized, but they no longer have a criminal penalty. Overdoses have remained static and, of course, at an unacceptable level. Next slide, please. What we are seeing, the Watertown Police Department in the last 2 years has seen an increase in complete disrespect for the law and for law enforcement. The criminal elements have certainly become emboldened. You've seen this on the news where criminals are now entering garages, they're entering homes to find the keys to the car, to steal the car. They're trying to enter a car right at gas stations or convenience stores. And it's no longer in the cover of darkness. It's often in the broad daylight. And this is a new trend in our society. We've also seen, especially in the evening and midnight shifts, a dramatic increase in vehicles simply disregarding our attempt to stop them. An officer will try to pull a vehicle over for speeding or going through a stop sign or a traffic signal, and the minute the lights and siren go on, the car simply takes off. Many of these cars come back either as stolen or the marker plate on them is a misuse of registration, meaning the marker plate doesn't belong on that car, so we can't trace it back to whoever owns it. This happens by midnight. Sergeants are telling me probably 2 out of every 5 cars they attempt to stop simply disregard the signal and take off, which is a dramatic shift in our society as well, and it's really telling of the complete disrespect for the law. So we've seen an increase in shopliftings. We've seen an increase in shootings and other gun-related incidents, in particular in Watertown. We did have Kimberly Lane occur earlier, as well as a stolen vehicle being abandoned on Buckingham Street just a few weeks ago that had bullet holes in it, which had been involved in some type of shooting incident. We've seen an increase of reckless driving on our roadways. We've seen the ATV mobs and the dirt bike mobs that have come through not only Watertown, but also surrounding communities and other communities throughout the state of Connecticut. And again, we've seen criminals entering garages and homes to steal motor vehicles and other property in a very brazen manner. Next slide, please. Just to give the community a quick update on our license plate reader project, our contract with Recor has been reviewed and signed. Recor is the vendor who will be installing 10 license plate reader, that's what LPR stands for, is license plate reader devices throughout the community, which will be scanning every single vehicle that drives by that camera. They'll be recording the make, model, and color of the vehicle, as well as running the license plate that's displayed through what's called a hot list supplied from the state. And that hot list will simply have all the registration numbers put in it that have a hit on them. And a hit would be if that particular license plate was entered as stolen, or possibly as an amber alert, or a silver alert, or is tied to a missing person. We'll be able to actually get live hits coming from these cameras to say, of stolen vehicle just entered the town of Watertown, say on Straits Turnpike, and we can actually deploy resources to try and locate that stolen vehicle prior to it committing another crime in town. We should have those cameras installed early January. We also have Chief Dealey here from Middlebury. I believe Middlebury and Naugatuck are both have signed contracts already with the same vendor, and we'll be able to actually share all of our information regionally with these license plate readers. We feel it's going to be a real game changer in law enforcement. Next slide, please. We certainly like to express our sincere thanks to this community for your support and continued partnership. Our effectiveness as a police department is certainly tied directly to the trust and support and engagement of the community. So thank you very much, and I'd also like to thank my command staff who's in the back of the room today with me. So I will turn this back over to Chairman Antonetti. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Josh. It's always a good report and an excellent effort by the department in trying to contain and enforce the law. I'd like to then go to some other issues. We hear about Watertown. I would wonder if whether the town of Middlebury would have anything to offer. Chief?
Our numbers match Watertown's with the increases in specific crimes. No one's immune in any part of the state of Connecticut. We are subject to the same elements that are affecting the residents of Waterbury, Watertown, and Naugatuck. Based on that, we are trying to create regionalization by signing agreements to work together, and that LPR camera system is part of it. What I'm strongly encouraging is neighborhood participation. There needs to be communication amongst each other. The reason why we're all meeting here in a forum like this is because we are now aware that the crime is right outside of our door. We've had several cars stolen from Middlebury that were located in Waterbury and actually used in shootings. One of them was involved in the shooting of the 10-year-old. So those people who are involved in the shootings are the ones right outside your door. Now, in the old days, it was the block watch, the crime block watch. It's so much easier today if you use technology. I meet with our condominium associations, but anyone can do it. You get your group, your neighborhood, you put them on a group text. You have to learn to be aware of your surroundings, and when you see something, say something. We don't want you confronting these individuals, but if you put out a group text or a group email, hey, did somebody see this car? Next thing you know, you have 4 or 5 neighbors that are going to be watching and protecting each other in these circumstances. So I strongly encourage everyone to be aware of their surroundings. I'm encouraging communication. And if you see something, please say something. A lot of our residents, they got a false sense of security because I moved out to the suburbs. It won't come out here. Well, it's out there. And now they realize it. So they came to us with their concerns, and we tell them how to best protect themselves. And in our profession, we have communication going on amongst ourselves, and we're using our resources to try to more efficiently and effectively address this criminal element. But you have to realize you are living in a target-rich environment. What you have out here, certain individuals want. We'll leave the other issues on how to stop this up to our legislators and our states and our courts, but it's all issues that have to be addressed specifically on all levels. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Chief. Some of the issues here, as you can see, the efforts that are going to be made are on a regional sense, and just recently, as far as last month, the group of 16 members of the 960 gang was a result of a regional effort, both dealing on a federal level, state, and local level, and that was over in Waterbury. And that's something, as the chief has just mentioned, it's on our front door, and we all have to become alert as a community. I'd like to turn the concept of our discussion over to the town manager, Mark Rainwell.
Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. I want to thank Representative Paletta and our Police Commission for spearheading this roundtable discussion. I would also like to thank the council members and the general public for understanding the importance of this discussion topic. I have a few comments based on 26 years of law enforcement experience, and now as the town manager, I have the opportunity to speak with many people in our community on a professional and personal level. Community members have communicated clearly that many do not feel safe with the increase in crime reported through our traditional police statistics, media, social media, and basic word of mouth. I am asking Representative Paletta to continue his hard work voicing our community's concerns. We are not happy with the blatant actions of criminals in our community. We are not happy about the lack of consequences imposed on those that are committing crime in our community. We support our police, and we want clarity in the law supporting their mission to ensure a safe place for us to call home. I believe the spread of non-factual information and the introduction of the Police Accountability Act are two prongs that have negatively affected our law enforcement community. Unfortunately, these two prongs have directly impacted our community as well and sent a mixed message to our police. Our law enforcement community is made up of human beings. We ask them to be warriors, we ask them to be caregivers, direction givers, counselors, home health aides, and a never-ending list of other tasks. They are tired, and they feel unappreciated. It has been made very clear to me that there is a level of concern that their mission has been changed by reducing their tools in detecting and preventing crime by the introduction of this Police Accountability Act. How much do we ask of this group? As we review the statistics of the police department, I wonder how many crimes were not detected or reported because of the current state of affairs. We ask our police officers to provide an honorable and vital service to our community. I want them to know that they are supported and that I have every confidence that they will work within the law as our representatives work diligently to improve on what has changed to our laws. Law enforcement members do not have to work feeling vulnerable. We want them to feel supported. I look forward to a robust conversation tonight to empower Representative Paletta to go back to our legislature and send a direct message that we want change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mark, for those comments. I also now would like to bring in another aspect that has impacted just recently in one of our lower grades at Watertown schools, the superintendent, and I'm sure Dr. Villanueva will have some comments on what is happening on the school level as far as juveniles and dealing with those situations.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you as well, Representative Paletta, for inviting me to the table this evening, and to everybody up here at the front, as well as town council members and Board of Education members out in the audience this evening. For the schools, the Watertown Police Department is a key partner to us. Not only do they keep our community safe, but they keep our children, our youngest ones in our community, feeling safe about where they go to attend school each day, but also feeling safe when they get home and when they live in the community. We experience situations in schools where we are with young people who are making decisions every single day. Sometimes they make good decisions. We hope they make more good decisions than bad decisions, but they also sometimes make poor decisions. Sometimes those decisions can be malicious. Other times they're just learning and they're moving through life. And we can forgive, and we can also have parameters and opportunities for them to learn so that they can grow into productive citizens and kind, compassionate people that will give back to the community. Right now, coming out of COVID, what we are experiencing as a school district is an increase, an exponential increase in just mental health needs in our students. Being isolated for more than a year, having, I would say, an interrupted educational experience, perhaps being separated from family that they typically would have seen on a daily basis and hadn't seen them for over a year. Having people in neighboring towns that were either friends or families that may not the children of our Watertown perhaps making bad decisions, but maybe having friends and family from other towns that may have been making bad decisions, then impacting them has also impacted our students. So the rise in our mental health needs and our needs to be able to provide services to our students by way of counseling, guidance, school psychology, alternative education experiences just to increase motivation, engagement, to bring our students back so that they're attending school. These are all situations that somehow lead to our police department when we don't quite have what we need to offer our students. And so I'm very thankful to the partnership with the Watertown Police Department because we have had to call them a few times, and even if it's just for a wellness check or it's something more serious than that to look deeper into an infraction, they've always been there to answer the call. And I thank the town manager as well, who's always a part of any wide-scale situation that may happen in the schools so that we have clear communication out to our parents. Our number one job as a school is to keep our students safe, to keep our parents in the know, and to also make sure that our youngest people have confidentiality as they're growing up through the system as well. So it's a tough job for us to have, but it's one that we stand by and we certainly take ownership and responsibility for, and we will always do day after day. But if I could ask Representative Paletta, as you continue your work, is as you talk about the accountability system for the police departments, is to also talk about the great need that we have as a school system for mental health supports. And sometimes when you hear the term mental health, you think of the worst possible case scenario, but no, sometimes it could be as simple as having a counselor there just to talk to somebody who's experienced something, a loss of a family member because of COVID, or a loss of a friend because something went down in their neighborhood last week, or a kid that might be scared because there's somebody in a neighboring, town that's going to come and get them, or they think that's going to happen. Being able to have counselors at the ready, being able to have people who are experts in just young people and adolescents is very, very important. And I apologize, I'm going on, but it's a community effort too. You know, as the police are out there doing their work, it's a family effort as well. So for us to be able to provide community education or community opportunities so that families can come together and talk about these experiences with their children, with the professionals, with mental health support staff, it's an opportunity for everybody to take, and if we have those resources, we certainly will utilize them and utilize them well. And so I thank you for letting me at the roundtable this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva. I'd like to now turn the mics over to Representative Paletta. He's the man who will be up in Hartford if there is going to be any change in police accountability or whether there's going to be any change in laws in dealing with juveniles and juvenile offenses. So, Representative Paletta.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just want to say that as a representative of this district, I can say for sure that we are very fortunate to have these fine folks up here on this panel this evening because, you know, some people don't have that great luck and fortune in their towns to have leaders that are standing up for what is right and not afraid to tell the truth. And we've always been about that here in the town of Watertown. We've always been about telling the truth and making sure that when there's a problem, we deal with it head on. Well, there is no secret that there is a big problem right now. Since the start of the pandemic, crime and vehicle thefts has increased. Vehicle thefts in and of itself have increased 41%. I'm going to say that again, 41% increase since the start of the pandemic. We are experiencing a true emergency in the state of Connecticut to the likes that we have not seen before. You can't turn on the news at night without seeing some sort of violent crime, shooting, stabbing, car theft, juvenile crime, and the list goes on. There's no denying that. Those are facts. We are here not as a political party, and I think that's very important to say tonight. There's nothing political about this roundtable. This is about hatching out ideas, making sure that all of our ideas are put on paper, because as your elected representative, I'm going to take your ideas up to Hartford and hopefully get them into a bill when the session starts in February or maybe even earlier. But hearing from the public is my job. And sometimes I go to Hartford and I talk about a lot of issues that you bring up here and they fall on deaf ears, and that's unfortunate. But I know that this issue is not going away. My colleagues have done a great job at bringing awareness to this issue around the state of Connecticut. We have held forums and symposiums and roundtables and you name it all over the state to tackle this issue head on, and I think it's finally gaining traction. I just want to give you an example of what has happened recently. I spoke with someone today who works in the juvenile justice system, and she told me that there's some immediate changes that have already happened. Unilaterally, the judicial branch has already bought onto a couple of the proposals that you have in front of you. One, allowing officers access to juvenile records immediately. That has already been done within the last 48 hours by the Justice Department. Also, expedited arraignments, like next day, that has already been done. But there's so many more proposals that are out there, and if you haven't gotten a copy of the list, please do so, but there's so many more proposals that need to be tackled. So 2 out of 20 is not good enough, right? We need to make sure that when we get back into session, we pass a comprehensive bill that deals with juvenile crime reform and justice reform in the state of Connecticut. And by the way, a lot has been talked about the police accountability bill. I don't think I need to say it, but I'm going to say it. The police accountability bill should be repealed and replaced. Repealed and replaced. That was an awful piece of legislation that was passed. I was proud to stand up and vote no. It prohibits cops from doing their jobs. Crime has increased since that bill was passed. And as the chief said, and others, police officers don't feel that sense of respect after that bill was passed. That was an attack on their profession. And by the way, there is no secret. There are bad cops, There are bad teachers, there are bad lawyers, there are bad politicians, all over the place. But the vast majority of law enforcement individuals and the vast majority of people that work in government are good people. I believe that. So if we're going to take a couple of examples and punish the entire group, that's not fair. So tonight, we hope to hear from the public. I know there's a couple other commission members that will say a few words. And we're going to take these proposals loud and clear up to Hartford and let our voices be heard, because there are Democrats and Republicans that want to fix the bill and fix our justice system. It's not a one-sided issue, but the time has come to do it. And I would hate to see someone else lose their life because of the shortfalls in our justice system right now. We saw it on East Aurora Street. We had a near miss on Kimberly Lane with the shooting. We had a number of car robberies and violent crimes in town, and then let's not even get into our neighbors in Waterbury. We know that they're doing everything they can over in Waterbury to combat this, but you pick up the newspaper and, 2 days ago, there's a car crashes into the mini mart. A couple of weeks ago, as a chief detailed, young girl shot. This is going on every single day. This is not a once or twice a year thing. This is going on every single day. We have to do something. So I'm all ears. I'm open for suggestions. And I just thank all of these fine folks on the panel for being here and for their dedication to our town. The people know that. I know that. And I hope our message resonates in Hartford. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Paletta. I think you hit a few points that are very, very important, and as you say, maybe in January or February, we will see some change on the state level. At this time, I would like to open up the mics on the two chairs in front, and anyone who would like to speak, and a part of this whole roundtable is the impact on the community. And one of the best ways to get feedback on what should be done, what can be done, or suggestions is from the community. And that's what the meeting is all about, input from community. And those two mics are open. I see the lights are on. Just come up, state your name and address if you'd like, and tell us your thoughts. I'm going to put a time limit. There are several people here of 3 minutes, and we'll go with that. Two mics are open. Please come forward. I'd like to hear what the community has to say.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity. My name is Tom DeMatteis. I'm a born and raised Oakville resident and business owner. I lost a friend and a brother last year. This hits home because both defendants were in front of the judge the day of the accident. I don't want to bring up specific names, excuse me, because I'm not a public speaker, and you guys speak so elegantly, and I'm nervous here, but
Could you speak into the mic? Bring the mic to you.
that might make it even worse. Criminals no longer have fear. They don't have fear of their parents. They don't have fear of the justice system, of the police department, and they don't have fear of the court systems, and that has to change. My good friend and brother was, they call it manslaughter, I call it murdered. Driving 132 miles an hour down Route 202 in Litchfield, Torrington. Excuse me. The night before my buddy was killed, one of the defendants was clocked at 132 miles an hour on the highway and was arrested. Yet less than 12 hours later, he was a participant in the murder, manslaughter. The guy who came out into the into the oncoming lane, who actually struck my buddy, was in court that afternoon, an hour and a half prior to the accident. He had 11 additional warrants, and the judge let him go. come back tomorrow. Think about it.
Take your time.
Yep, thank you. Come back tomorrow, and an hour and a half later, my buddy's dead. His daughter is critically injured, started a month-long manhunt, in total disregard for the family and the system itself. Something has to be done here. You cannot be in front of a judge with 11 warrants and he pats you on the back and say, all right, good boy, come back tomorrow. That pat on the back cost a life and critically injured another. So these are the things that really have to be considered, you know. Now, if I could just move on quickly, and I'm sorry if I go past. A couple things that I wanted to touch base on tonight is some things can be considered as anti-police that I've said in the past, because I'm very concerned with the Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a constitutionalist. I think that some of the things that we're looking to do in the future, such as the cameras, are a scary proposition. We talked about, or we listened to, a matter of fact that the criminals are taking off. They throw on the lights and the sirens, they're taking off. In the meantime, the good citizens of the town are being data mined. And that's a serious consideration to take into effect here. It started with the machines on the back of the cars to do the same thing, correct? Unregistered, uninsured, stolen vehicles. Well, obviously it's not working. So now we're gonna put them in place throughout the streets, and the only thing they're doing is mining the data of the good citizens and storing that information. And now throughout towns, so everywhere we go, we're being tracked. You know, so these are some of the things that in the future, as we're moving forward. Originally, I was even more upset because I thought they were going to be issuing citations, from which I understand they're not. You know, those traffic cameras, hopefully, you know, as I hear you say, you believe that they're going to do well for the town and cut down crime, but it's not. Back in the police, let them get back to doing their jobs. You know, I don't want to say shut the cameras off, and, you know, frankly, sometimes people need to get their butts handed to them. I'm coming from sitting in front of my father's partner and boss. My father was a 32-year Waterbury cop, primarily narcotics and vice. You know, so I have a lot of heart felt for the police department, and always will. I want to support them as much as possible, but we have to be concerned with authoritarianism as well. We can't allow the envelope to surpass what the Constitution says. You know, so it's one thing. So in a quick review, please, Joe, something has to be done. The criminals cannot or could no longer not have fear of the entirety of the system, from parents to police to court systems, and they have to be held accountable for. I mean, as kids, if we ever stole a car, I'd be more concerned my father was going to get a hold of me. But then again, in all seriousness, you were going to jail. Not anymore. There's no repercussions. And then also, in this fine state, criminals are looking for victims. They're not looking for fights. And this state is making the citizen really have to guess how much fight they have in them. And that's another thing that you got to be concerned about. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Some other comments. Please state your name and address. bring the mic closer to you. Thank you.
Genesis Alfonso, Lovely Drive. That report was pretty heartbreaking, first, I want to say. I want to say thank you to Joe for holding this. I want to say thank you to Watertown Police. Thank you guys for what you do. You're great. You're doing a great job. The police accountability bill, I 100% agree, needs to be repealed completely. With 2020, the isolation that a lot of these children have had is clearly a cry for help, what's going on. It's a cry for help. They want either attention. You know, a lot of these kids, they haven't been around a lot of family members and things like that. This doesn't have necessarily to do with the police, but I like to put out there to think about investing in a Boys and Girls Club, just recreational activities. A lot of these kids, they don't know what to do, where to go. And, you know, I know it's tough with the masking now. A lot of people, you know, refuse to go to certain areas, and that makes it a little bit harder. But investing in building things like a bounce house or a ice skating rink or a roller skating rink, somewhere where they can go and put out all this energy that they are using instead of putting it into the crime that is happening. A lot of these kids, they just need an outlet, but it needs to be a positive and productive outlet. When it comes to the drugs, I mean, I guess that's just what happens when you have a border that's wide open, so there's not much we can do locally about that other than allowing the police to do their job. So again, I want to thank you for having us here.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Mikowski, Cutler Knoll, Watertown. I'd like to thank Representative Paletta for bringing us all together tonight. And I'd like to, first off, for those that don't know me, I'm also Vice Chairman of the Watertown Board of Education. And I'd like to piggyback on what Dr. Villanueva was talking about. It just so happened this past Monday night at our board meeting, an important agenda item was to talk about our budget. And Dr. Villanueva brought before us members of her team, not just members of her cabinet, but it was her building administrators to talk to us about what they need. And what we heard over and over was the mental health, the behavioral impacts, the discipline, right, the disruptions. As Dr. Villanueva said, our number one priority is to keep our children safe, to provide a rigorous educational environment. But when our teachers and staff are spending a good portion of their time with discipline or counseling, that takes away from the educational environment, okay? And so my request, and regretfully, it's a hard one, is money, okay? For those that followed Watertown school system last fiscal year, you'll recall that the Board of Education had to make a sizable request for an appropriation from the town, okay? That was to cover primarily special education costs. Well, when we have to, when the Board of Education in the town has to spend money on special education, right, we don't have money to put towards counselors and other resources to address the mental health and behavioral needs. And so I think it's important that we go back to the General Assembly in Hartford and make a case that it's not just Watertown and Oakville, right? It's not just the northwest corner. The entire state has a glowing need for more resources. Counselors, teachers, paraprofessionals, the list goes on and on. And so we sit here trying to provide the very best education, the very best support structure that we can to our children, to our families. But we can't just do it on the backs of our taxpayers here in Watertown. And so I would ask not only, Representative Paletta, State Senator Berthel, who fight for us day in and day out, but everybody listening, everybody in the community, to write to both Eric and Joe, to write to the majority leaders in both the House and the Senate in Hartford, and express what's going on and what we need. Because unless we get the resources, our schools are a front line, right? It's our school resource officers, who play a pivotal role in taking our children who are in crisis and bringing them down so that we can work with them before something happens. They're two guys. They're two individuals. We only have so many counselors. So, it's unfortunate it comes down to money, but money is what gives us the resources to attack the problem in our youth where we see them. We know our teachers and staff spend more time probably with our children than they do with their parents. So I want to thank you all for bringing this together tonight, and I appreciate all the community members. I'm hoping that this gets the ball rolling and this gets heard in Hartford. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Ron Blanchard. I live at 37 Booth Avenue, and I'm here tonight as a representative of Water Oak Crime Stoppers, as its co-founder, and current vice president. We wholeheartedly support this forum. We thank the police department, thank the police commission, and Representative Paletta for their efforts in this endeavor. Recently, we offered a $1,000 cash award for information leading to the arrest of the person or persons responsible for the drive-by shooting on Kimberly Lane. The award still stands. It's not been called in on, but the award does still stand. On the state level, we would support Representative Paletta to repeal the high-speed pursuit policy. In supporting the members of the Watertown Police Department, we realized that criminals love high-speed pursuit policies. The police can't pursue them, so they take off at the first time that the lights and siren come on. They're in a criminal act. Their hands are tied. If you pursue, you're in violation, you can lose your job. You can be sued if there's an accident, et cetera. So we would implore Representative Paletta and his brethren to repeal this law. On the local level, we would like to see us go back to the days of the 80s and 90s when I was a detective sergeant with the Watertown Police Department. We had 5 neighborhood watch programs in existence. They worked. As Chief Dealey said, they work, they're 40% effective, that's what I've been told, 40%. Well, 40% is better than nothing. But the residents have to have some fight, some dog in this fight. The residents have to take part and become the eyes and ears of the police, because the police cannot be everywhere. We've learned that through experience. So we need to start neighborhood watch programs. Doesn't cost anything. It's neighbors notifying neighbors. And as Chief Dealey said, with modern technology, texting, alerts, things of that nature, you can notify your neighbors when there's something in the area. Take the information and pass it on to the police immediately. Become the eyes and ears of the police. So again, just to go on the record, we support Watertown Police Department, the men and women who are doing a great job out there, but they need the tools. We need to repeal that law for high-speed pursuits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ann Rosa. I support the repeal of the very poor legislation and also increased juvenile crime regulations to address the problem. Tonight is not political, but I have to tell you, I have little faith that when a handful of legislators or senators get in Hartford, that they are going to be able to carry what we need through and get the vote done the way we need it done. There are thousands of residents in the communities affected, and look how many people are here tonight. We need to stand up and be counted as residents. We need to have our voice heard, not just Joe Paletta's voice and Eric Berthel's voice. Everyone in Hartford needs to know that the public wants the change. You might consider a petition that could circulate through half a dozen municipalities in this immediate area. Get 30 or 40,000 signatures. With social abilities nowadays, we should be able to do it very easily. If that doesn't work, maybe you can come up with another way that there's a letter on the computer that people can print off, sign, and mail. But the rest of us need to stand up and be counted like you. And I think if we do that, there is a potential for change. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann Rosa is a member of the town council, and the town council is vital. Councilman DeCina, who is on at the end of the table, is our liaison for the board police commission, and he is attending our regular meetings, and he would be our voice on the council. By that, I mean the voice of the police commission, and he brings forth ideas to the council. So Representative DeCina will be looking at you for local works.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Yes, sir. Your name and...
Stephen Rubo, Pondview Drive. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for your time. I just wanted to say, obviously, all your jobs are impossible. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I think everything should start at home. And I don't think parents are doing enough to control their kids. And I see what Dr. V goes through, and I could just imagine not only taking care of kids, but trying to take care of parents who, you know, are just not with the program. And that whole police accountability bill, I mean, everyone knows that it was horrible from the start. It's just led to increased issues. But bottom line, all your efforts are for nothing unless parents start teaching their kids better and watching what they're doing. And if they don't get in the game, we're all done. The next generation, we're all done. No matter all your efforts, it's got to start at home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Roger Mitchell, 99 Norway Street. First off, I'd like to congratulate all these guys in the back in uniform. I mean, they do a job that, it's tough. I mean, they bring somebody in, they get loose before they do. And
Could you
as far as the
pull
first-
that mic a little closer to you? Or just talk into it a little? That's it.
Okay, as far as the first guy that talked, that friend of his, that was my second cousin that this clown killed. These liberal judges got to go. I don't know if you guys can do anything about them, but there was one judge in Waterbury, it was in the paper. The guy broke into his girlfriend's house, beat her up, used the taser she bought for protection on her. The judge that issued the restraining order fined him $1,200 and let him walk. That's nuts. That's crazy. He almost killed her. And, you know, like I say, you guys are putting your life on the line every day. You don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. And you get these judges that turn you loose and to start with. I mean, that makes me nuts. I could never be a cop because I'd have to shoot some of these guys just to start with. I'm not a violent person, but I just don't buy that. And as far as teachers, when I went to school, you respected the teacher. You called them Mr. or whatever, Mrs. Now, they don't care. You can't do anything. You can't throw them out because the parents come in, scream bloody murder, they put them back in. So it's just frustrating. I read the paper. I quit reading the paper because it makes me nuts. And that's about it. Now, I just wish you guys can get rid of all of the liberal judges, not some of them, all of them. They're useless. They turn guys loose for no reason. Another case they had in Waterbury stopped a guy for, I don't know, speeding or something. And they said, okay, we look in your car. The guy said, yeah. They found the gun, $32,000. The guy's out of work. He pays a $1,200 fine, and he walked out plus drugs. He had a carload of drugs tucked in the door panels, yeah. That's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I just want to say congratulations to you guys. I mean, you do a heck of a job.
Thank you.
Put your hands are handcuffed on 90% of this stuff.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to say that Mary Ann Rosa just stated a couple minutes ago about bringing some attention to this. Well, we do have people here that are from outside of town. My friend Bill Pizzuto from Waterbury, former president of Waterbury Yukon, Bob Stefanowski, and George Logan. All three have come here tonight because I know that they share the same views and reached out to me to make sure that everyone knows that it's more than just a Watertown issue, it's a state issue. And Mary Ann hit the nail on the head. A few people in Watertown are not going to make a huge change to this bill. But what's going to happen is 40, 50, 60,000 people. You saw what happened with the tolls, right? People got involved. They voiced their opinion one way or another, and they didn't go forward. And that's what we need to do with this. Thanks. Hi, Gary.
Thank you, Joe. There is, I believe, Commissioner Genetti. I know you had a meeting tonight, but you would get her.
He's on your right.
Oh, he did get up here. Welcome,
I
Commissioner.
snuck past you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have anything to say?
I'll let Mr. Lafferty say what he needs to say, and then I'll speak after him.
Thank you.
Thank you for the town, having this program tonight. I want to say I worked for the telephone company for 38 years, and I worked all over the state. And this problem's been going on since back then. I worked down New Haven and Bridgeport, and back then it was just sad to see every school. Inside the school, they have security officers, or outside the schools, at every 4 points of the parking lot, they have police officers. It's almost like you got to get the military in next or whatever. And the kids, they run down the halls, and the teachers try to stop them. And all they say is, I know where you live. So we lost a lot of teachers over the years being threatened like that. And I blame a lot of it too on TV and video games and everything else. It's just a big nightmare. It's a big, it's a mess, but that's what I wanted to say. I hope we can do something. And like I said, I'm glad Watertown's taken a step, trying to nip it in the bud there, but it's like I said, this has been going on for many, many years. That's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Joe Massey, 33 Pleasant View Street in Oakville. Mr. Chairman, Joe Paletta, I appreciate your efforts in having this meeting so we can air our concerns. We're all residents of this community. We've got a stake in what happens. And I wanted to start off by saying I definitely am not a fan of the defund the police issue. I think it started a slippery slope towards the disrespect of police in general across this country. I think as citizens of this town, this state, this country, we ought to be providing the police department with the proper monies to do their job legally. I think we ought to be in a situation where we're providing them with the proper legal background so that they're taken care of, and as long as they do their job in a legal fashion. I don't, however, support any officer that breaks the law knowingly, as he's an officer supposedly working for the community, and I think they deserve the harshest prosecution under the law. We're a society that lives under a democratic form of government. We're entitled as productive citizens to be free and enjoy our lives in the community and in this country. The problems that we're having are that judges are letting out criminals under lenient terms. The cops have their hands tied with this police accountability bill, which, from what I hear, is a bill that should be repealed at the earliest convenience. But more than that, I think that anybody who breaks the law should be punished in accordance with the crime. And I'm talking not only about adults, I'm talking about teenagers. I'm talking about the fact that we should not be subject to a rash of car break-ins, business break-ins, home break-ins, all in a spirit of fun. And let's see what we can do. I think they ought to be punished, and I think their parents ought to be put in a position of paying the freight to rectify any monetary damages. And I think we've got to do something, and do something now, because as far as I'm concerned, this country is at a crisis. And if it's let go too longer, we're not going to be able to enjoy the democracy that we have now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Rachel Ryan, 37 The Green. Thank you, everybody, for holding this forum, and obviously for all of the service that you all perform for our town. I have a couple questions and a few points I'd like to make. First of all, I want to start with a quote from Benjamin Franklin, who said that if you sacrifice security for civil liberties, you deserve neither. So I think it's really important that we balance both our civil liberties and our protections and the freedoms that we deserve as citizens. I know a little bit about the police accountability bill. I certainly am not an expert. I don't know enough about it. I understand how it would tie your hands if you need probable cause to search a vehicle. But obviously, I think there's probably reasons behind that as well, in terms of the innocence of the person, presuming the innocence of the person who's driving the car. And I want to go back to one other thing before I go on to my questions. I did not hear the gentleman totally clearly, but it sounded like he was joking about killing judges. I heard guns and judges, and I just think that's highly inappropriate. I'm sure you all know in the news that a federal judge lost her son when a man came to their house and to deliver a package and shot him dead in front of her. So it's just never should happen, especially in a forum about crime. So Representative Paletta, I have three questions for you. The first is, and I'll just read them off, and if you want me to read them again as you answer them. I just want to know what the state legislature is doing about the causes of crime, because obviously there's causes for this, and I think a lot of it is probably pandemic related. What are your positions on gun control and getting guns off the street? And you mentioned that you want to replace the bill, so I want to know what your plans are for replacing the bill.
Those are great. Well, first, what the legislature is doing for crime is nothing. That's why we're here. We have been, as particularly on my side of the aisle, have been pushing for reform on the police accountability bill since its inception last summer. You know this, and I've certainly spoken about this over the last 12 months, that I was extremely opposed to that bill in accordance with our chief and our town leaders. That bill, as we spoke about, basically prohibits the cops from doing their job. And the problem that arose after that bill was an average police officer, and some of them are here tonight, right? They know that if they pull someone over, they are very limited as to what they can do when they pull someone over. So rather than nip the crime in the butt at the beginning, they might say, okay, you have a tail light out, I'm going to write you an infraction, and on you go. When prior to that police accountability bill, you may have been able to search the vehicle for drugs. That's just one example. Again, the meaningful proposals that we've put out mainly deal with juvenile crime, but until we have at least a public hearing on it in Hartford, nothing can happen. There hasn't even been a mention of a public hearing. That's a shame. And I forgot your last question.
Oh, I wanted to know, well, what did you want to replace it with, specifically in terms of like what actual proposals for the bill? And then also your stance on guns and gun control and
So
guns.
I think the bill, number one, there's parts of the bill that should be repealed. I mean, the qualified immunity piece should immediately be repealed. There's some of the parts of the bill were actually not that bad, like the body cameras, which I think were universally accepted. But there's parts of the bill that, again, prohibit police from doing their job. Those need to be pulled out of the bill. They need to be repealed. We are seeing the effect of that in a lot of communities. I mean, if you look around the state of Connecticut, we've had forums and we've had people from both sides of the aisle attend these forums because they realize that this has become exacerbated since the pandemic started. Mainly because I think, as I was talking to someone today who I mentioned earlier works in the justice system, the masks. Now, a lot of times, the law enforcement are asked to identify someone like this. You can't identify me like this. If I have a hat on and a mask, all you're looking at is eyes and eyebrows. That's not enough to accurately track down someone that perhaps breaks into a store or steals a car. So that's obviously been exacerbated since the pandemic started. As far as gun control goes, I mean, I don't know how that really fits into the police accountability bill. That's kind of a whole separate issue, but I will say that it all comes down to mental health, as Dr. Villanueva said. We have had a huge problem with mental health. If you look at the people that are committing the gun violence acts, you can agree with me as a teacher that there is something seriously wrong with those folks that are committing those acts. The law-abiding good citizen is not to blame. I think you can agree. The law-abiding good citizen that goes to the gun club or goes to the game dinner that's target practicing or gets their pistol permit for protection is not committing these awful crimes. It's folks that unfortunately, going back to what someone said here tonight, it starts at home. There's something going on. There's a lapse there where either they are brought up in a tough environment, which is very unfortunate, or even worse, they're not held responsible for crimes that they committed, and then comes the big one. And we saw that in Wisconsin, where the gentleman drove through the parade. So you can use gun, car, knife, anything. But when that guy drove through the parade and killed 6 people, including 2 kids, he was let out on bail like 2 days before. So there's definitely a lapse there. You wouldn't and I wouldn't drive through a parade filled with kids. So you can replace gun with car, with knife, with machete, with anything, and it's the same effect. That's just my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions? Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm from out of town, so I'll be brief. I'm Bob Stefanowski from Madison, Connecticut. And I just want to say a lot of the issues that have been noted here tonight are very similar to Madison and very similar to across the state. And I admire the heck out of what you guys and women in law enforcement do. You put your neck on the line every day for us, for our safety, for the safety of our kids, and we appreciate that. I also think you should recognize that you're very fortunate to have people like Representative Berthel and your state senator. We don't have that all across the state. People up in Hartford that are pushing for law enforcement and pushing for the safety of people, Senator Berthel as well. And I'd like to end with a question. We talk a lot about the police accountability bill. I think one of the most hurtful pieces of that was the removal of qualified immunity for officers. And I'd like to hear from the officers in the room, what has that done to the recruiting classes? What has that done to staffing levels? What has that done to morale? I would imagine the reason that we're not seeing so many high-speed chases is if something bad happens, people can now come after your personal assets. So here you are chasing a alleged criminal. Something bad happens and you're held personally responsible for it. So just your thoughts on what that piece of the bill has done to your ability to do your job, to attract good people, and to keep the people in the community safe. Thank you.
Josh, would you like to comment?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Stefanowski, for those comments. And you bring up a very important discussion that we here only need to have here in Watertown, but across this entire state. The anti-police movement in 2020, coupled with the police accountability bill, had an immediate and noticeable impact on the morale of not only the officers in the Watertown Police Department, but across our great state. It is very telling in the amount of applicants that we have for police positions, and you've probably also seen this broadcast on many of the news channels across the state, that departments across Connecticut are having significant trouble recruiting and retaining qualified candidates. When we used to put a test out for applicants just 2 years ago, we would get hundreds of applicants for each police position we were trying to hire for. Now we're lucky to get 40 or 50 in any single testing process. That's down by hundreds just from 2 years ago. It's very, very telling. And I think Town Manager said it, Ramos said it very, very well tonight, that our officers are experiencing a lot of uncertainty when they come into work, uncertain of what is actually expected of them by our society now. Is there a part of society who wants us to be firefighters? Do we stay in the police department until we're called for a crime and hop in our police cars and go to the crime? Or do they want us out patrolling and deterring crime? And that does involve weighing the considerations, as Councilmember Ryan stated, and as Ben Franklin stated, between our liberties and our security. There is a balance there. I think in the last 2 years, it's shifted much, much too heavy into our liberties and has taken a toll on our safety and security. And we need to push the other side of that lever back down a little bit and even that back out again. So thank you for those comments, Mr. Stefanowski. There's been certainly a lapse in police morale.
Would you like to comment, Chief?
It's definitely had an impact on the officers. It's the thought process that society has picked up through activist groups or whatever. It's gained momentum where people are more readily challenging the police upon every encounter. They're questioning why they should be stopped. And they feel emboldened to act aggressively towards the police officers. And the police accountability bill has also now put more restrictions on those police officers. So they've tipped the scales in a direction that makes the police officers feel unsafe. So when the officer has the choice, well, should I really go after him? What did really happen? Sometimes they're more opting out to not engage because they want to avoid that confrontation. So it has harmed society. I think with the right direction up in our legislature, I think once they see that the majority of the people, which I believe will do the right thing, it'll come right back. But some action needs to be taken. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So that police accountability bill did allow people to vent their frustrations, their concerns, and it's been heard. Now let's hear the other side of the coin, and let's get a nice equal balance. Let's make it bipartisan. Let's not make it a one-party issue. And I think we could get right back up. our goal is to make the community feel safe. So how are we going to get there? The only way we're going to get there is to get there together. And it's forums like this that our officers do feel that they do have the community support. So I thank you.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Genetti, you had a comment to make. It's good to see you tonight here.
Waiting patiently, but I came in a little late, so that's okay. I wanted to perhaps summarize some of the phrases and words that I heard here tonight over and over again, because they're striking to me. Some of the phrases and words that I've heard by many of you: repeat offenders, blatant acts, broad daylight, disregard for the law, lack of respect for authority, no fear of the law, emboldened, aggressive, lack of punishment. And to me, these are new phenomenons in society. Over the last couple of years, we've seen this. I speak from 29 years of law enforcement experience, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm worried about this. I have the Ring doorbell on my house. I'm a member of the Ring Network. If you don't know what that is, see me after the meeting. I think it's a great thing to be a part of. But unfortunately, every morning I wake up to these notifications of my neighbors having, it looks to be juveniles, coming up their driveways, into their yards, into their garages, checking car doors, as if they have the right to do that, violating private property. And that's concerning to me, that there is very little respect for private property. When Representative Paletta, and thank you, by the way, for putting this together, but when you came to the Police Commission meeting, I'm a vice chairman for the Police Commission here in town, you did ask for our input, and I told you that I wanted to see if we can strengthen our laws about trespassing laws, violation of private property. That's one thing I'd like to see. The other point I'd like to make is, thank you all for coming here, but we need more folks to get involved in things like this. So speak to your neighbors, speak to your friends, get them involved. Come to the town council meetings, come to the police commission meetings. We have our chief and his staff are there every month. It's a great way to get their ear and the ear of the police commission and bring your concerns forward. Ms. Ryan led with a quote. I guess I'll end with a quote. The father of modern-day policing, Sir Robert Peel, in his 9 principles for modern policing said, the police are the public and the public are the police. What he's saying is that the police are only appointed to do what all of us have a vested interest in, and that's keep our community safe. The police department can't do it without all of us, the help of all of us. So the more we get involved, the more we can tackle some of these issues that we're all concerned about here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Again, please get your neighbors involved, friends involved, and we could do this together. I'm confident that we can tackle these problems together. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments from the public?
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
Take it easy on you tonight.
Very good.
Arizona.
That's where you
Got the repercussion last time.
That's when you can get me, right?
No, I appreciate you people do a good job. But in this world, I'm glad I lived in the days that I did, because to me, I'm only getting older, I think it's getting worse. I could be right. Nowadays, you can't express yourself verbally. Am I right? So if you can't express yourself verbally, press your bills in people's heads, and then they're going to take it out on you physically. But in the schools, you guys are the best influence for the kids. I don't know, you know more about law enforcement than I do, what age to start off. Maybe he would be good, and the fire chief would be good with the kids in kindergarten, first and second. But David Genetti and Herman and people, law enforcement, could go in and talk to the kids about drugs, crime, show them pictures of if you go to prison, get them a little scared. Even, I'm in the construction industry, they have random drug tests. They don't bother me because I don't do drugs. They know me through the Union Hall and this and that. But random drug tests would tell if this person's on this, you know, everything is with safety, hazmat, everything. But you guys should go into the schools and teach these kids. It happened years ago. You know what I'm talking about, Herman. That's what you guys should do it. And then send letters to the parents, or have the neighborhoods get involved. And then if kids get, this kid was for drugs, and then he got another offense for this, so many offenses, you go to the reformatory or whatever it is. That's how it has to be done. You could do it with legislature, but that's just the vast majority. That ain't within our own needs. You know, I was growing up Italian. I was growing up with the yardstick, the cat o' nine tails. Oh yeah, his father would tell you, pariad. Yeah, we learn. But I still have some cousins that are the Brevettis and all, they're on the wild side. But we all learn. So, but that's the parents today, people get divorced. The father would treat the kids better than the mother to make the mother jealous, you know, and well, we rather go to the father or rather go to the mother. So, but I think it's what you guys should teach the kids in the school. Classes. Every grade, every year, a different one. You know? I think schools should have some way to test the kids if they're coming in for drugs or something. With this modern technology in this world, it should be easy. You take speeding on my street or Riverside Street, it's like Riverside Raceway. I like to invent a speed bump. If you're going over 25, the speed bump comes up out of the road. We'd be multimillionaires overnight. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. And any other comments? Any other comments?
I'll keep my comments brief. Hi, everyone.
Could you state your name, please?
Sure. George Logan. I, too, am from out of town, but I have a vested interest in Watertown and all the towns in the 5th Congressional District. You know, when this police accountability bill, this anti-police bill, came up in the state legislature, I was a state senator at the time. We were in the trenches with good state legislators like Joe Paletta, Senator Berthel, Senator Minor, and others. Many of us are in favor of police reform, but done in a reasonable manner. And that bill had many bad aspects to the bill. At the time, folks like myself and State Representative Paletta talked about what the ramifications of passing that bill would be. And now they are coming to pass. We are not doing our youth any favors by encouraging or supporting bad behavior. And how are we doing that? Because of the laws passed by the state legislature. They're breaking the law. They're getting barely a slap on the wrist, being released. Hamstringing law enforcement to do their jobs. That needs to be corrected. So this anti-police sentiment that we have from many in the state legislature and from our congressional delegation has to change, and I think it's up to, I'm so happy to see so many folks here providing testimonial and letting them know, letting you know, letting the powers that be know that we need a correction. Safety is important. We need to bring sensibility and reasonableness to the laws that are made. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I will do whatever I can to continue to support the community, support our youth, you know, with, I believe, programs to keep them occupied and busy, doing good things are important. I grew up in an inner city, and there was the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, and they had all kinds of programs in the early 80s when I was a youth. And I think a lot of those things are lacking now. So we all need to work together at the state level and at the federal level to bring those types of programs to our youth, to help set them on the right path from an early age but also to make sure that the youth know, that all residents know, that there are consequences for breaking the law. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Any other comments?
Could I say one thing?
Just a minute, yeah, sure. Chief?
It was mentioned about activities for the youth. There's one that's right next door to us, the Waterbury PAL. It is one of the best organizations going. I think it'd be a role model for the country to look at for youth involvement. So it's something that the young lady in the back referred to, and also Mr. Logan just now. I know the YMCA, I grew up with it, the Boys Club. You're right, they seem to have disappeared. But if you look in Waterbury and see what they're doing, I think they're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else in the country. So you could look there for an example to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir, your name, please?
My name is Anthony Fusco. I live at 192 Bunker Hill Road, and I appreciate the policemen on this staff. I take my hat off to policemen. I'm speaking as a military police myself. I was in Korea way back in 1953. I think the drug situation started in 1953 because when I was there, I saw more drugs than I ever saw here. And it used to come over the fence. Guys would buy it with no problem. Sit alongside the fence, their eyes would tear, they would turn around, they were like dopes. They didn't even know their own names. And because I was a military police, I know what police duty is like. It's nothing funny. I appreciate any policeman that takes a job as a policeman. They do the best they can. They have gotten their hands tied since all these laws that have come out. People are not the same anymore. People think that policemen are terrible. They're not. They just obey the law, and they make people obey the law if they obey it. I don't understand whatever happened to obey the law, because today, nobody wants to obey the law. And I despise anybody that talks about this Black Lives Matter. All lives matter as far as I'm concerned, not just blacks. The black people are some nice people. When you meet them, I had a black officer for a captain in the service. He was the best I could ever have. Very nice person. I had a lieutenant that represented me in court because I got court-martialed in the service, and I don't mind telling you the story. I was on pipeline patrol for 7 months. I confiscated 500 5-gallon cans of gasoline that people were trying to steal over in Korea. And I ended up picking up about 150 55-gallon drums along with the trucks. And I was arrested because a CID guy came into the outfit and told my captain, who was a black man, and he was a captain of the company. He told him that I was taking bribes. I would never take a bribe. I never took any bribes, but he claimed I took bribes, and he had proof that I had bribes. So I got jailed for 30 days, and I was held because at the time I was supposed to come home, I was in the brig. So I ended up having all kinds of paperwork with me that I was on patrol, and I had an every day, every hour of what I did on that patrol. And if it wasn't for those papers, I wouldn't have been able to tell them that I didn't do anything. So when my lieutenant that I had was also a black person, very, very nice people. And he represented me in court. And I ended up staying over 30 days more than I was supposed to in the service. And when I went to court, this lieutenant stood up and told the judges, the 3 judges, what I had done. And when they heard the amount of things that I confiscated, they couldn't believe that I was taking bribes. So halfway through the lecture of the person that was representing me, the judge turned around and says, okay, you can sit down, we heard enough. He asked the other fellow that was pressing charges against me, and I had 3 charges put against me. And he didn't have any records, he didn't have any witnesses that had ever been against me.
On that
So
note,
the judge just slammed the gavel, and out I went. And I came home. And after 6 months of me being home, the 2 people, the one that represented me and my captain commander, came to my house to see if I was okay, and I was. I never took a dime from any place, but in thinking that I was going to get an award for doing what I did, I got nothing. I was also in there in Korea when there was the prisoner swap. I was there when they did the prisoner swap, and we took the people off of the ambulance that came in from North Korea, and they got sent to Incheon, and they went to Korea, Japan, and came to the States. So I was in the military, and I did my duty. Now, just like these fellas do their duty, and the teachers also do their duty. But to me, I think the people in this country don't have enough handle on their kids. They let them get away with murder, and that's why the situation has gotten so bad. In my days, I grew up with a father who was very strict. Every time I went out anywhere, he said, don't come home or don't call me from jail. If you call me that you got arrested, I'm going to come to the jailhouse and tell them to put you back further into jail. So I'm 89 years old at this point. I never saw what a courthouse looks like inside because I never got arrested, I never stole anything, and I was always honest. That's all I can say.
Thank
Now,
you.
I know,
Thank
I
you.
know, I know Mr.
Thank you,
I know
Mr.
Mr.
Fusco.
Paletta very well since he was a kid, and I've always talked to him about these drugs that are going on. I wrote a letter stating that the drugs were the worst thing that could happen in this country. And believe me, till this day, I still don't like that. Now, I'm here to just tell you, if the people that raise children should know how to raise their children, and if they don't know, they should go to some kind of educational system to find out how to raise kids, because the kids today have no respect for their parents. And that's why when a mother or something is approached by a policeman and say, your son did this, this, and this, oh no, not my son. That's what you get for an answer, right?
Mr. Fusco, thank you for
Okay.
your service.
I'm sorry for
Getting-
taking up all your time, and I hope you understand where I come from.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco.
Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to comment? We appreciate all your efforts tonight. We have one more comment, I think, for 3 minutes. I'm trying.
Al Mickle, 95 Woodbine Avenue. I can do this in less than 3 minutes. We came here tonight about juvenile justice reform, and the police chief gave a wonderful presentation about the number of crimes committed. The data, you can't fix a problem unless you clearly define what the problem is and where the data exists. We didn't get the ages of the people that were arrested for these crimes. Is it a juvenile problem, or is it just a across-the-board problem? So I think that makes a difference sometimes in how you solve the problem is where the problem exists. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else from the community, I'd like to thank everybody who was here tonight, who gave statements, and I hope you all have a very good night and a very safe way home, but also a very safe and healthy New Year. Thank you.